No word tonight on what sparked a fire at Rikers Island that injured 20 people. The fire broke out at about 1:30 this afternoon. We're told 15 of those patients had to be taken to the hospital to be checked out. 5 of those patients were inmates. The rest were staff members at the jail.
Tonight, a class action lawsuit filed by the New York Civil Liberties Union and Prisoners Legal Services accuses the State Department of Correction and Community Supervision of violating the HALT Act and forcing people into prolonged solitary confinement. The HALT Act caps the time an incarcerated New Yorker can be held in segregated housing to 17 hours per day and no more than 15 consecutive days, or 20 days over a 2-month period. The lawsuit says DOCS is abusing provisions in the law to keep people in confinement housing longer when that's supposed to be reserved for the most serious incidents.
We've had people get confinement for throwing wet sugar packets, for throwing water, for saying kind of loose, vague potential threats of things they might do at some unknown time in the future when they're out of prison.
In a memo last year, DOCS Acting Commissioner Anthony Annucci noted a considerable rise in violence against prison staff after HALT went into effect. At a February budget hearing, Annucci said staffing shortages have made it difficult to move incarcerated people to residential rehabilitation units or to supervise them for required out-of-cell time. He told lawmakers the department was very close to compliance with the law if they weren't already.
We tried to hit the ground running, and when we did, we quickly got overwhelmed by the number of assaults that were happening. And so we didn't have sufficient immediate capacity in our RRUs, which backed us up in our SHU capacity.
Lawmakers gave the department a year to prepare for the law to take effect. Michael Powers, president of the State Corrections Officers Union, says the state failed to give the department the proper resources to successfully implement the policy. Assaults on staff are up 25% since 2021, according to the commissioner's memo, which exacerbates staffing issues.
Where is the advocacy for not just your employees, but the overall violence that occurs inside these facilities? Where are you?
But advocates argue, regardless of the other issues, they believe the law is still being broken.
20 people are recovering after a fire at Rikers Island set by an inmate. It started around 1:30 yesterday. It was out within the hour.
Overall, 15 staff members and 5 inmates were hurt, and 15 of the 20 had to be hospitalized. There's no word yet on just how badly their injuries are. The fire broke out the same day a group of Democratic state lawmakers were visiting to underscore their opposition to Governor Kathy Hochul's proposals to modify New York's bail laws.
7th, welcome to the Noon. I'm Chris Welch. Thank you for being here. A person connected to the shooting of a rookie NYPD officer in Queens is now in custody. Just a short time ago, the suspect was walked out of the precinct by police. You see it right there as the officer recovers at a nearby hospital. Let's get straight to Antoine Lewis. He's live in Jamaica, Queens, where this is all unfolding. Antoine.
Well, as you saw in that video, Chris, the suspect not happy about being taken into custody, giving gestures and things. But let's tell you what happened and how this all went down. Now, authorities arrested 22-year-old Devin Spraggins last night in the Wakefield section of the Bronx. U.S. Marshals actually helping to take a part in that operation. Now, he is charged with attempted murder of a police officer in the first degree, possession of a firearm, assault, as well as governmental obstruction. Police say on Wednesday the suspect got into a fight over a seat on an MTA bus in Jamaica, Queens. When officers arrived to investigate, they were shoved out of the way, which then led to a pursuit. Now, 22-year-old Brett Bowler, 3 months on the force, was one of the officers that was running after the suspect. Police say as the chase neared 161st Street, Spraggins opened fire, shooting Bowler in the hip, which shattered one of the bones that connects his hip to his leg. Now, this morning during a news conference at 1 pp, Chief of Detectives James Essex actually got emotional when we asked him about what was his reaction when he heard that one of his officers had been shot.
Probably the most difficult and tension, your adrenaline just rushes, and the anxiety when you hear police officer shot, any police officer shot, and especially a new rookie police officer, someone who father I've worked with for 15 years, knowing his son was out there doing the job and getting shot. I think every police officer just feels that rush to get out there and help and do what they can.
That's exactly what happened as you look at the video from that. But we want to tell you a little bit more about how they were able to take this person into custody. Police used social media tracking to nab Spraggins, including the social media accounts of the people that were inside the home where authorities say that he was taken into custody, again, in the Bronx. So we're going to have a little bit more about that later. Come back to me live now, and I can let you know about the latest on Officer Bowler. He's in stable condition at the hospital. Now, his injury is quite serious. He's got a long road to recovery ahead, but he is expected to survive from his injuries. We're going to have a complete report coming up a little bit later, but for now, this is the very latest in Queens. Back inside to you.
Glad to hear he's going to be okay, though. Antoine, thank you.
In Southern California are streets that stretch from Compton to the coast. They are reminders that no matter how closed off you feel, there's always a path to what's possible.
Ash Wednesday for me, a reminder of my faith.
Irene Arce is surrounded by reminders.
You can hear it.
The faith embodied on her forehead, the farm that fills her days, and the flag of a country that promises the possible, even to the millions it literally closes off.
Armed robbery, grand theft auto, and assault and battery. Yeah. I'm not proud of what I did. I don't believe in that way of life, and I haven't for a long time.
77 million Americans, or 1 in 3 adults, have a criminal record. At any given time, 2 million sit in prison. Every year, more than 500,000 come out. And within 3 years, well more than half who do are arrested again.
People equate success to going back to work.
Gina Boyer is a program manager for Second Chance San Diego.
We're not really addressing some of the other root causes.
They're among the growing number of programs who combine job training with supports for healing.
Cilantro, it goes pretty fast.
Not unlike a half-acre farm 2 hours north.
It feels good. I feel like I'm centering myself.
Alma Backyard Farms sits on the edge of Compton.
Round 2, see?
Its small staff consists of those with criminal records.
Alma in Spanish translates into English as soul.
Richard Garcia co-founded the farm.
We're going to install the edgers.
He wanted to grow produce in a well-known food desert.
We're going to demo that wall.
But he also wanted to show how it looks when those re-entering society are given the space to do so with grace.
Time hasn't really stopped in the outside world, and I think we overlook kind of the gentleness with having to help people adjust.
Okay, just let me make sure.
Irene is more than a decade removed from her past.
Yeah.
She still attends therapy and support groups. Even on a day where wind gusts hit 30 miles an hour, she seeks peace on the farm.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I need therapy. I'm not ashamed to admit that sometimes I need to be in a therapeutic setting. Sometimes I need to just shut my brain off and I need to just do something positive.
This is excellent.
It's the same for Aweng Miman.
Yeah.
He chose not to disclose his past. He says he reflects on it while living his present.
My mind's not out there, it's just right here. Nice and peaceful, you know?
The farm employs few. The state where it sits is blazing a path for many. California just received clearance to provide those set to be released with benefits and a care package funded by Medicaid. Under federal law, Medicaid can't be used on those in jail. California is the first of 15 states to apply for a waiver. But the farm is its own example.
Like you said, you can go from the hood to the beach.
There will always be paths from Compton to the coast. There will always be paths from one's past to what's possible.
To hang on to hope, even if it's with your last finger, if you hang on to hope, hope will work itself out for you.
In Compton, California, I'm Matt Pearl.
Incarcerated people in the U.S. are overcharged for basic phone calls. It's a less well-known issue, but essential for prisoners and their families. This winter, a new law went into effect aimed at capping the price of those calls in prison and jail. But even as prices have come down, a new report is sounding the alarm about the escalating costs of essential non-phone services for video and electronic messaging as well. Our communities correspondent in New Orleans, Robbie Chavez, has been looking into all of this as part of our series, Searching for Justice, and he joins me now. Robbie, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. So bring us up to speed on these prices. Why does it cost so much for incarcerated people to keep in touch with their families?
Well, look, Amna, it is a huge burden. Some families tell us they spend anywhere from $400 to $500 a month just to stay in touch with their incarcerated loved ones. Now, there are many issues that impact these high costs of these phone services. Number one on that is a lot of these prisons get commissions from their phone service providers. Advocates say they're getting kickbacks, and that is what's keeping these prices high. There's also a lack of competition out there. Only a handful of providers are giving services to prisons and jails across the country. And the one thing we hear from families is, in addition to the high cost of the calls, they also are inundated with extra fees just to deposit money or open or close one of these phone accounts. But there is help on the way. As you mentioned, federal regulations, including a law signed by President Joe Biden in January, will put a cap in place for in-state calls. Previously, there was a cap only on out-of-state calls. Back in 2018, prices in jail ranged from $10 to $15 for a 15-minute call. Today, it's a lot lower. The average is about $3 a call, but family members say it's still too much. Now, advocates warn that there are still higher prices for other communication services like video calls, email-like services, and using tablets because all of those technologies remain unregulated.
Robbie, why are these calls so important? I mean, what do we know about the connection between public safety and making sure that incarcerated people are connected to the outside world?
There's a lot of research that shows that it leads to better outcomes. While people are in prison, better behavior, better health. And then once people are released from prison, if they have these good support circles in place, then that makes reentry much more successful. And studies show that it lowers the recidivism rate. In fact, those people who had no contact with loved ones were 6 times more likely to end up in prison. Now, these high costs are such a burden to families, particularly in states like Louisiana, where more than 50% of the population is considered working poor. Those costs add up. We spoke with one family member who told us she spends about $300 a month just so her 4 children can speak to their grandfather who is incarcerated. The reason that matters is because the burden falls on these families. They then become financially unstable and are more than likely not able to help their family members once they are released from prison. And the reason that matters is because a lot of people who are released from prison have a lot of debt, like $13,000 in fees and fines that were incurred when they were sentenced.
So, Robbie, the prices for phone calls have been coming down. That is good news. But what about for other services to stay connected? Are families still being overcharged on those?
Yeah, Amna, as we wait for those new regulations to be put in place by late next year, advocates are already warning that some of the costs have already shifted to other forms of communication and technology. In fact, a report was released last week by the Prison Policy Initiative. They warn that prison telecom companies are evading regulations and making money off of those kinds of services. Like text-based electronic messaging, similar to email, but comes with limitations. The cost to send those e-messages varies. It could be free to 50 cents in places like Alaska and Arkansas. At least 43 state prisons now offer some type of electronic messaging options. Again, these type of messaging, it's not like regular email because it lacks certain features, has arbitrary restrictions like character limits, and attachments like photos and videos. Those all cost extra. So most advocates believe we're moving in the right direction, but there are still some gaps.
That is our communities correspondent, Robbie Chavez, joining us from New Orleans. Robbie, thank you so much. And you can read more of Robbie's reporting online at pbs.org/newshour.
All right, and we're here with Cross Marte, CEO of COMPTON. Can you tell us a little bit about your brand?
What we do is we hire people coming out of the prison system, justice impacted by the cannabis space. We want to give them the opportunity to work with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Where are you thinking about opening your dispensary?
I'm trying to work and open up in the LES, so I'm born and raised in the Lower East Side, so I'm looking to open a shop out there.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for standing with me, man.
Rallying outside of City Hall, calling on Mayor Eric Adams to close Rikers Island. News 12's Marissa Marcelino has more on their proposed plan to close the jail by the mandated date of 2027.
Close! 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 We need to invest in expanding supportive housing, reentry hotels. We need to expand alternatives to incarceration. We need to expand supervised release.
Councilmember Lincoln Ressler and Councilmember Kevin Riley are spearheading a plan to safely close Rikers Island. They're hoping the process can begin with the upcoming city budget. They're calling for investments to safely cut the jail population, to expand access to housing, and to prioritize speedy trials.
Look at what's actually happening in Rikers, which is that most people need mental health support. Most people need a lot of specialized support. That is not a psychiatric facility, and it should not be.
The city council worked with advocates to come up with solutions that would put an end to what they're calling a humanitarian crisis on Rikers.
It can save lives. It can create a more humane, safe community and city where people don't end up in jail at all.
Their goal is for various legislation to be passed immediately and for investments to be made so that the structure is in place to close Rikers by August of 2027.
We're asking the administration to follow the law. We shouldn't have to ask you to follow the law. Please follow the law.
The city council members here today say they are committed to getting the city back on track to close Rikers by 2027, and they're calling on the mayor to adopt their comprehensive plan. That's the latest from City Hall. Marissa Marcelino, News 12.